My name is Alara, and at 28, the quiet, ordered world I had so carefully built began to crumble under the weight of my own family's expectations. For 5 years, I had been the perfect tenant in my parents' investment property, a loft in a beautifully converted textile mill on the edge of Port Blossom. I worked as a junior landscape architect, a profession that suited my love for creating harmony and structure from chaos. I paid my rent on time every time. I asked for nothing. Then my brother, Leo, his wife Chloe, and their 2 young children found themselves without a home, and my sanctuary became their refuge. My mother, in her infinite and often misguided love for her son, decided I should pay double for the privilege of housing her favorite child. She didn't know that in pushing me to my limit, she was inadvertently handing me the key to my own liberation. I have always been the planner, the steady one. While my older brother, Leo, chased his elusive muse as a musician, I charted a different course. I navigated my university years with a combination of scholarships and part-time jobs, emerging with a degree and manageable debt. I started at Viridian Design Group as an intern, fetching coffee and organizing material samples, and over 4 years, I worked my way up to a position where I was trusted with small-scale public park projects. My life was a testament to quiet persistence. My relationship with my parents, Carol and David, was pleasant but lacked a certain emotional depth. They were proud of my stability, my sensible car, and my growing savings account, but their eyes lit up with a different kind of fire when they spoke of Leo. He was the artist, the free spirit, the one with dazzling potential that was always just around the corner. We had a practical arrangement that suited us all. 5 years ago, when I was 23 and just starting at Viridian, they offered me the 1-bedroom loft with an adjoining study at the Riverbend Lofts. The rent was $1,200 a month, a little below the market rate for the area. The space was a blank canvas, concrete floors, high ceilings, and industrial windows that flooded the rooms with light. In exchange for the modest discount, I agreed to handle the cosmetic updates myself. Over the years, I transformed that loft. I painted the stark white walls in shades of soft moss green and warm gray. I installed reclaimed wood shelves for my books and plants. I replaced the generic light fixtures with vintage-inspired pieces that cast a golden glow. The small balcony became a lush garden of herbs and flowers. It was more than an apartment, it was a reflection of my soul, a space I had nurtured into a home. I treated it with the utmost respect, both as my sanctuary and as my parents' investment. Every first of the month, the rent was in their account. When the old water heater finally gave out, I paid for the new unit myself, asking only that they cover the cost of the plumber. They often told me how much they appreciated having a daughter they could count on, a tenant who caused them no trouble. Meanwhile, my brother Leo, now 32, lived a life of beautiful, chaotic improvisation. He'd never held a job for more than a few months, always finding some artistic or philosophical reason why the constraints of regular employment stifled his creativity. He was charming and talented, with a guitar and a voice that could quiet a room, but he lacked the discipline to turn his passion into a profession. He had a knack for finding people, mostly women, who were captivated by his dreams and willing to support them. His wife, Chloe, had been with him for 8 years. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, but her income was sporadic and often barely enough to cover their expenses after their son, Noah, now 7, was born. Their daughter, Maya, arrived 3 years later, and Chloe's work became even more intermittent. The pattern with Leo was predictable. A panicked call to our parents would announce some new crisis. The landlord was selling their rental house. The car needed a new transmission. Noah needed braces. Our mother, Carol, was always the first to respond, her checkbook open. The money was always framed as a loan, but we all knew it would never be repaid. My father, David, would sometimes sigh and mutter about responsibility, but he never challenged my mother's decisions. I had learned to erect boundaries around my own life. When Leo asked me for a $1,500 loan 3 years ago to fund a sure-thing demo recording, I gently refused. He didn't speak to me for months, and my mother's conversations with me were tinged with a subtle, sorrowful disappointment until Leo's next crisis erased his memory of my transgression. Despite the family drama, I was on track with my own 5-year plan. I had a promotion on the horizon at work and had been given the lead on a small, but prestigious community garden project. I was more than halfway to my savings goal for a down payment on a small townhouse of my own. The first tremor of the coming earthquake arrived during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house 3 months ago. Mom mentioned, while serving her famous roast chicken, that Leo and his family were having landlord trouble again. "The new owner is just heartless," she said, her voice laced with indignation. "He expects the rent on the first of the month, no grace period, no exceptions." I almost choked on my water. "Mom, that's standard. That's what you and Dad expect from me." "Oh, that's different, sweetheart," she said, patting my hand with a familiar, dismissive affection. "We know you're reliable. Leo has the children to think about. And Chloe has been so stressed, trying to find more clients." Dad cleared his throat. "He's had 6 months to prepare for the new owner's policies." Mom shot him a look that could curdle milk, and he fell silent. I recognized the preamble to a request, a gathering of clouds before a storm, but I prayed I was wrong. "Anyway," Mom continued, turning her bright, expectant gaze on me, "they might need a place to stay for a little while. Just until they get back on their feet." I focused on slicing my chicken into meticulously even pieces. "That's a shame. Have they looked into any family housing programs?" "We thought they could stay with you," Mom said, as if I hadn't spoken. "You have that lovely study. It would just be temporary." The word temporary, when spoken by my mother in relation to my brother, was a concept as fluid and undefined as his career path. Temporary loans became permanent gifts. Temporary support became a lifelong subsidy. "Mom, I work from home 2 days a week. I need my office." "You could put a small desk in your bedroom," she suggested, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Family helps family, Alara. You have to." I looked to my father for an ally, but he was suddenly engrossed in the pattern of his dinner plate. I knew that look. He disagreed, but he would not say so. "Besides," Mom added, delivering the final, unassailable blow, "think of Noah and Maya. The children need stability." The familiar weight of guilt settled on my shoulders. It was a well-worn cloak she draped over me whenever she wanted something, and even as the logical part of my brain screamed in protest, the part of me that had been conditioned to be the good daughter felt its suffocating warmth. "I'll think about it," I said finally, knowing that in my family, this was not a prelude to a decision, but the decision itself. That night, I called my best friend, Simone. "They can't be serious," she said, her voice sharp with indignation. "Your loft is what, 900 square feet? Where would 4 other people even fit?" "The study could work for the kids with a bunk bed," I found myself saying, already problem-solving against my own best interests. "Leo and Chloe could use a sleeper sofa in the living room, I guess." "Alara, no," Simone said firmly. "This is a recipe for disaster. You've worked so hard to create your own peaceful life. Don't let them burn it down." But I knew I would. When it came to my family, I always did. The following weekend, I watched as Leo, Chloe, and the children moved their essentials into my carefully curated space. Apparently, essentials included Leo's collection of vintage amplifiers, Chloe's loom, and several boxes of yarn, and enough plastic toys to constitute a public health hazard. "We really appreciate this, Els," Leo said, directing me on where to place a box overflowing with his vinyl records. "It'll just be for a month or 2, tops." "Right," I said, the walls of my once spacious living room already closing in. "We should probably set some ground rules, though." Chloe rolled her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, but I pushed forward. I created a chore chart. I designated shelves in the refrigerator and pantry. I set quiet hours for when I needed to work or sleep. I even drew up a simple agreement stating they would contribute $300 a month toward the skyrocketing utility and grocery bills I was about to incur. Leo signed it with a dramatic flourish. "No problem, sis. We'll be the best roommates ever. You won't even know we're here." That promise, I would soon discover, was as empty as his bank account. Life with my newfound roommates quickly devolved from awkward to unbearable. Every corner of my ordered existence was frayed by the presence of Leo, Chloe, and their children. My mornings, once a quiet ritual of coffee and contemplation on my sun-drenched balcony, became a frantic race for the single bathroom. My evenings, my time to decompress from a day of detailed design work, were now a cacophony of children's television, Chloe's lengthy phone calls, and the melancholic strumming of Leo's guitar as he waited for inspiration to strike. The food situation became a constant source of low-grade stress. Despite the shelves I had so carefully labeled in the refrigerator, my organic produce, my good cheese, the ingredients for the healthy meals I prepped for my work lunches, they all vanished. In their place would be half-empty cartons of sugary cereal and plastic-wrapped cheese slices. I got groceries, Leo announced proudly one afternoon, dropping 2 small bags on the counter. Inside, I found hot dogs, a loaf of white bread, and a family-sized bag of potato chips. Leo, this doesn't quite cover the almond milk, the free-range eggs, and the salmon you guys ate this week, I pointed out, trying to keep my tone light. He shrugged, already rummaging for a snack. Food is food, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. The small stuff added up. When I reviewed my credit card statement at the end of the first month, my grocery bill had more than doubled. The promised $300 contribution never materialized. When I brought it up, Leo was full of plausible excuses. We're just waiting for Chloe's big client to pay their invoice, he'd say. Or, the deposit on our next place is going to be huge, so we have to save every penny. A week later, a brand new, top-of-the-line gaming console appeared, hooked up to my television. Working from home became a nightmare. I had explained that I needed quiet from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This rule was forgotten by the second day. Auntie Alara, watch this. Noah would shout, attempting a somersault in the living room just outside my open study door while I was on a video conference with a client and my boss, Mrs. Albright. I'd hastily mute myself, my face burning with unprofessional embarrassment. Is everything all right there, Alara? Mrs. Albright asked once, an eyebrow raised at the sound of a child's shriek in the background. Just some family visiting, I'd mumbled. Temporarily. My privacy evaporated. I came home from work one day to find Chloe wearing my favorite cashmere sweater. She'd returned it later, stretched out and smelling of her perfume. My expensive, salon-quality shampoo in the shower seemed to be depleting at an alarming rate. The final violation came when I discovered 4-year-old Maya in my study, drawing on a set of my landscape blueprints with one of my professional-grade architectural pens. The ink bled through the vellum, ruining hours of work. Kids will be kids, Chloe said with an airy wave of her hand when I showed her the damage. She just loves to draw, like her mom. Chloe, these are for a client presentation tomorrow. And that pen costs $20. My voice was tight with a frustration I could no longer contain. Well, maybe you shouldn't leave such tempting things lying around, she replied, a defensive edge to her voice, as if the fault were mine for having a workspace in my own home. Leo was, as usual, no help. She's just a kid, Els, he said, not looking up from his new video game. Lighten up. It's not like we're planning to live here forever. But as the first month bled into the second with no sign of them looking for apartments or Leo looking for a job, I began to fear that was exactly what they were planning. I tried to talk to my parents, hoping they would intervene. I met my mother for lunch, choosing a neutral cafe downtown. Mom, this isn't working, I began, carefully laying out the issues. The loft is too small. They're not contributing financially. There are no boundaries. Instead of understanding, I was met with a look of deep disappointment. Alara, they are going through a difficult time, she said, her voice taking on the martyred tone I knew so well. Leo is an artist. He feels things so deeply. This rejection from the landlord, it's been very hard on his creative spirit. He's not looking for work, Mom. He plays video games all day. That's not fair, she said sharply. He's networking online. It's how the music business works these days. Not everyone can have a straightforward, 9-to-5 life like you do. The implication hung in the air that my life was simple, unimaginative, and therefore less valuable than his chaotic, unfunded dream. Besides, she continued, where would they go? You wouldn't want your niece and nephew on the street, would you? The guilt, sharp and effective. I suggested they could stay with my parents for a while. Mom looked aghast. Oh, we couldn't possibly. Our house isn't child-proofed. And at our age, we just don't have the energy. The irony that she expected me to have the energy while working a demanding job was apparently lost on her. My father, when I called him later, was more sympathetic, but equally unhelpful. I know it's tough, kiddo, he said. But you know your mother. When she gets an idea in her head about helping Leo, there's no stopping her. Just hang in there a little longer. It'll work itself out. And so I did. But my work began to suffer. I missed a minor deadline on the community garden project. My normally meticulous notes for a client meeting were disorganized. Mrs. Albright, a sharp but fair woman in her late 50s, called me into her office. Ilara, what's going on? She asked, her gaze direct but not unkind. You're one of my most reliable team members, but lately you seem distracted. Tired. The dam broke. I confessed everything: a crowded loft, the lack of privacy, the financial strain, my parents' refusal to see the reality of the situation. She listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned forward. You're a kind and generous person, Ilara. But there is a difference between helping and enabling. Your family is taking advantage of that kindness. You need to fix this. Not for your job, but for yourself. She was right. But I still couldn't see a way out that didn't involve a massive family explosion, with me at its epicenter. I had no idea my mother was about to light the fuse herself. 6 weeks into the temporary arrangement, my mother made an unannounced visit. I came home from a long day at the office to find her and Chloe sitting on my sofa, sipping tea from my best ceramic mugs. Ilara, there you are, Mom said, as if my arrival were an inconvenience. We were just talking. My stomach tightened. I knew this talk would not be in my favor. I mumbled a hello and headed for my bedroom to drop my bag, nearly tripping over a pile of Noah's shoes and a stray amplifier cable. When I entered my room, I found Maya napping on my bed, a faint, sticky handprint on my silk pillowcase. I took a deep, calming breath, changed out of my work clothes, and returned to the living room. My mother was surveying the chaotic space with a critical eye. This place is getting a bit cramped, isn't it? She commented. It was a masterful understatement. My serene, green and gray haven now looked like a disaster zone. Dishes were piled in the sink. Laundry overflowed from a hamper in the corner. Toys and books and stray socks littered the floor. It's difficult with 5 people in a space designed for one, I said, my voice carefully neutral. That's what I wanted to discuss, Mom said, setting down her mug. This current setup isn't ideal. For a fleeting, foolish moment, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Had she finally seen reason? Leo and Chloe need a proper room, she continued, extinguishing that hope with a single sentence. And the children shouldn't be in a small study. It's not good for their development. I agree, I said cautiously. They should probably intensify their search for their own apartment. Mom waved her hand dismissively. That's not realistic right now. What with the cost of everything? No, your father and I have come up with a much better solution. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with the conviction of her own brilliance. We think it would make the most sense for you to move your things into the study and let Leo and Chloe have your bedroom. That way, Noah and Maya can have the living room as their main play area. It's much larger and gets better light. I stared at her, speechless. She wanted me to give up my own bedroom, the last private space I had, and relegate myself to the tiny, windowless study. It would just be until they're back on their feet, she added, that meaningless phrase again. And, of course, since the apartment is now housing a whole family, we think it's only fair that the rent reflects that. The rent? I echoed, my voice a faint whisper. Yes. We feel it would be appropriate for you to start paying double. $2,400 a month, she said, as if discussing the weather. After all, you're the only one with a stable, professional salary. And you have to admit, you're getting the benefit of having your family close. The room felt like it was tilting. I looked from my mother's serenely certain face to Chloe, who was suddenly fascinated by a loose thread on the sofa cushion, refusing to meet my eyes. "Let me see if I understand this," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You want me to give up my bedroom, live in a closet, continue to pay for all the groceries and utilities, do all the cleaning because no one else does, and now pay you double the rent for the privilege of housing my brother and his family in my home?" My mother's expression hardened. "I think you're being incredibly selfish, Alara. This is what family does. We make sacrifices for each other. If the situations were reversed, Leo would do the same for you in a heartbeat." A dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "No, he wouldn't. Leo has never sacrificed for anyone but himself. And you, Mom, you have enabled him his entire life. That is an unkind thing to say. Is it untrue?" My voice was rising now, shaking with a potent cocktail of hurt and fury. "I have worked for everything I have. I built a life for myself. I am responsible. Your son is a 32-year-old man who has not made a single genuine effort to support his own family since he moved in here. And now you expect me to not only house them, but to pay a premium for it. You've always been so critical of his artistic path," Mom said, her voice taking on the wounded tone that had been her most effective weapon for years. "He just needs a little more support than you do." "A little more support?" I was practically shouting now. "I am supporting them. I am paying for their food, their electricity, their water. I have received nothing in return but disrespect and a ruined set of blueprints." Just then, Leo strolled in from the corner store, a bag of chips in his hand. He took in the scene flushed face, my mother's stony expression, Chloe's deliberate avoidance. "What's going on?" "Mom thinks I should pay $2,400 a month in rent to live in the study, so you can have my bedroom," I said, turning on him. "What do you think of that, Leo?" He had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable, then he shrugged. "I mean, it does make sense. There are more of us here. And what is your contribution to this household?" I demanded. "Hey, we're family," he said, as if that were a magic incantation that absolved him of all responsibility. "We help each other out. When my music takes off, I'll pay you back for everything." "When has that ever happened, Leo?" I shot back. "When have you ever paid anyone back for anything?" "You're being dramatic, Alara," he said, tearing open the bag of chips. "If you can't handle having us here, just say so." The air crackled. The challenge had been issued. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The part of me that had always sought their approval, that had always shrunk to accommodate them, simply broke. "Fine," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I can't handle having you here." The silence that followed was absolute. "You don't mean that," Mom said finally, her voice softer now, sensing she'd pushed too far. "You're just stressed." "No," I said, looking from my brother to my mother. "I mean every word. This arrangement is over." Mom stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. "I am so disappointed in you, Alara. Family is supposed to be a rock." "This isn't a rock," I countered, my voice regaining its strength. "This is an anchor. And it's dragging me down." "If that's how you truly feel," Mom said, her voice like ice, "then your father and I will have to reconsider your tenancy here altogether." The threat was clear. Comply or be homeless. "I see," I said, a strange, liberating calm washing over me. "I'll need to think about that." My apparent capitulation seemed to satisfy her. "Good. We'll expect your decision by the end of the week. And the new rent will be due on the 1st of next month." After she left, Leo returned to his video game and Chloe scurried into the kitchen. I stood alone in the wreckage of my living room, in the ruins of the life I had so carefully constructed. That night, I lay awake in my bed, for now and for the first time, my tears were not of frustration, but of resolve. They had made their position clear. I was not a daughter to be cherished, I was a resource to be tapped. As the first light of dawn filtered through my window, I picked up my phone and sent a text to Simone. You were right about everything. I need an exit strategy. Her reply came back almost instantly. I've got my car. What's the plan? For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I was done being the rock. It was time to be the river and find my own way to the sea. The morning after my mother's ultimatum, I woke with a quiet, steely resolve. If my family saw me only as a utility, I would cut off the service. I would disappear from their lives so quietly they wouldn't notice until the lights were already out. My first step was a clandestine meeting with my laptop and my bank statements during my lunch break at work. My dream of a townhouse down payment would have to be repurposed. It would become my freedom fund. I created a spreadsheet, a fortress of numbers outlining a new, solitary budget. It was tight, but it was mine. What are you working on so intensely? Mrs. Albright asked, pausing by my desk. My Declaration of Independence, I said with a wry smile. She raised an eyebrow. I explained the latest development in the family saga, the demand for double rent. That's not a request, Alara. That's extortion, she said, her expression grim. Take tomorrow off. Go find a new place to live. Consider it a mental health day. I need my lead architect back, and she's not in this office right now. I was floored by her kindness. That night, I went home and played my part, smiling wanly at Leo's jokes and reading Maya a bedtime story, all while secretly scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. The next day was a blur of viewings. The first few were dispiriting basement apartments that smelled of damp, tiny studios on noisy streets. But the last appointment of the day was different. It was a one-bedroom apartment in a well-maintained older building on a quiet, tree-lined street. The landlord was a kind-faced, elderly man named Mr. Henderson who lived on the ground floor. My wife and I always believed in being decent to our tenants, he said as he showed me the space. It was smaller than my loft, but it was clean, bright, and had a small balcony overlooking a shared garden. Fair rent, quick repairs, and we don't bother you. That's the deal. The rent was at the top of my new budget, but the sense of peace the apartment exuded was priceless. I would need to move in as soon as possible, I told him. How soon is soon? Next weekend? I asked, holding my breath. He considered it, then gave a slow nod. The place is ready. If you want it, it's yours. I signed the lease on the spot, the stroke of my pen feeling like the most significant act of my adult life. The next week was a masterclass in stealth operations. I began to dismantle my life in the loft, piece by piece. I packed things that wouldn't be immediately missed, out-of-season clothes from the back of the closet, books from the bottom shelves, the special occasion dishes I never got to use anymore. I ferried the boxes to my car during my lunch breaks and dropped them at the new apartment, which Mr. Henderson had graciously allowed me to access early. The furniture in the loft, technically belonging to my parents, I would leave behind. For my new place, I became a connoisseur of secondhand websites. I found a simple bed frame, a small, sturdy dining table, and a surprisingly comfortable armchair, arranging for them to be delivered directly to my new address. I took other precautions. I opened a new bank account and rerouted my direct deposit. I set up mail forwarding. I gathered my important document, birth certificate, passport, social security card, and secured them in a locked drawer at my office. The hardest part was maintaining the facade. I had to feign contemplation about my mother's offer while secretly plotting my escape. Have you given any more thought to your mother's suggestion? My father asked during our weekly call. His voice was laced with a familiar weariness. I'm still weighing my options, Dad, I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. Between you and me, I think she's asking too much, he confessed in a near whisper. But don't you dare tell her I said that. His words were a small comfort, but also a final confirmation. He would not fight for me. I was on my own. The following Saturday was designated as D-Day. Leo and his family were spending the day at my parents' house for a barbecue strategy session, my mother had called it, to discuss my cooperation. Simone arrived at my loft at 9 a.m. Sharp, armed with boxes and coffee. I still can't believe you're doing this, she said, marveling at my efficiency as we wrapped my remaining kitchen items. I'm so proud of you. I didn't think I had it in me, I admitted, carefully placing the last of my mother's wedding china, which she had given me years ago, into a box. But they left me no other choice. We worked with a silent, furious energy. By early afternoon, every trace of my personal existence had been scrubbed from the loft. All that remained was the furniture, the appliances, and the overwhelming sense of chaos my brother's family had created. Before I left, I stood in the doorway and took one last look. I had loved this space. I had poured my heart into its walls. Now, it felt like a foreign country. On the kitchen counter, next to the ever-present pile of dirty dishes, I left a single white envelope. Inside were the keys and a short, simple note. I have found my own place. Good luck. That evening, sitting on the floor of my new, empty apartment amidst a sea of boxes, I felt a strange cocktail of grief, fear, and exhilarating relief. I texted Simone before turning my phone off for the night. The eagle has landed. Her reply came instantly. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, my friend. You earned this. As I drifted to sleep on an air mattress, I wondered how long it would take for my family to realize I was truly gone. For the first time, I didn't care. The fallout was no longer my problem to manage. The first call came at 9:15 a.m. The next morning, I watched my mother's name flash on the screen, took a steadying breath, and let it go to voicemail. I spent the day unpacking, creating my new nest. Mr. Henderson stopped by with a small potted orchid as a housewarming gift. The simple, unconditional kindness of a stranger made me want to weep. By mid-afternoon, I had 5 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and a string of increasingly frantic texts from Leo. Where are you? Mom and Dad are here. This isn't funny, Alara. I finally called my father back, choosing the path of least resistance. Alara, what is going on? He asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and panic. Your mother is beside herself. You've just vanished. I moved out, Dad, I said calmly. I found my own apartment. There was a long silence. But all your things are here. No, I corrected him gently. All the furniture you own is there. All of my things are with me. I left the keys and a note on the counter. I could hear my mother's shrill voice in the background. What about your brother? Dad asked, relaying the question. What about the children? They're still here. That's between you, Mom, and Leo now, I said, a new firmness in my voice. The loft is your property. He is your tenant. Or your responsibility. That's for you to decide. This is tearing your mother apart, Alara. Where are you? We're coming over. No, I said, the words simple but solid as a brick wall. I'm not telling you where I am right now. I need space. Over the next few days, the calls and texts continued, a barrage of guilt, anger, and panicked pleading. My mother accused me of abandoning the family. Leo accused me of being selfish. Chloe sent a tearful text about how much the kids missed me. It was a well-orchestrated guilt campaign, but for the first time, I was immune. My silence was my shield. A week later, the tone of the messages began to shift. My father called, sounding exhausted. Your mother went over to the loft to talk to Leo, he said. She was appalled by the state of the place. And Leo is claiming you took things that didn't belong to you. What did I supposedly take? I asked, a weary laugh escaping me. The microwave, a coffee maker, some kitchen knives. Dad, I bought that microwave myself 2 years ago. The coffee maker was a Christmas gift from Simone. And those were my professional-grade knives. Everything that came with the loft is still there. Well, the place is a disaster, he sighed. Your mother says it will cost a fortune to clean and repair the damage. That sounds like a conversation she needs to have with her tenant, I replied coolly. Another week passed. Then came a call from Leo. Mom and Dad are saying I have to sign a lease and start paying them rent next month, he said, his voice filled with disbelief, as if this were the most unjust thing he had ever heard. That seems reasonable, I said. But I can't afford it. I don't have a job. Then I guess it's time to get one, I suggested gently. Or apply for housing assistance. Or any of the other things I mentioned weeks ago that you all ignored. This is your fault, he seethed. Everything was fine until you left. No, Leo, I said, The truth finally clear and simple in my own mind. Everything was fine for you. Because I was footing the bill. Now you're finally facing the consequences of your own life. Welcome to adulthood. I hung up, my hand not even shaking. The biggest surprise came 3 weeks after my departure. My father called, a note of genuine astonishment in his voice. Your brother got a job, he said. I was stunned into silence. Stocking shelves overnight at a grocery store. It's not glamorous, but he's working. Hasn't missed a shift. He paused. Your mother would never say it out loud, but I think you leaving was the shock to the system he needed. We all needed. It turned out that when the safety net was removed, Leo discovered he could fly. Or, at the very least, he could learn to stand on his own 2 feet. My relationship with my parents began a slow, tentative process of rebuilding. It was predicated on a new, unspoken understanding. My life was my own. My home was my own. My decisions were my own. My mother never apologized, not in words. But one afternoon, a small package arrived at my new address. Inside was the antique silver locket my grandmother had left me, the one I thought had been lost forever in the chaos of Maya's playtime. Tucked in the box was a short, terse note in my mother's handwriting. Chloe found this. It belongs with you. It was an olive branch. A small, but significant, gesture. I realized that by drawing a line in the sand, I hadn't destroyed my family. I had simply forced them to redraw the map. 1 year after my great escape, I stood on the small back patio of my very own townhouse. I had done it. I had saved, I had planned, and I had bought a home that was mine in every sense of the word. The air was filled with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. I had invited a small group to celebrate, Simone, of course, Mrs. Albright from work, my kind old landlord, Mr. Henderson, and my family. My parents were there, looking at me with a new kind of respect. Leo and Chloe were there, too. He was now an assistant manager at the grocery store, and she had a steady stream of freelance work. They lived in a modest, but clean apartment across town, one they paid for themselves. The children, Noah and Maya, were chasing each other on the small patch of lawn, their laughter bright and carefree. My father raised his glass. To Alara, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who taught us all a lesson about strength and self-respect. We are so proud of the woman you've become. My mother, standing beside him, nodded, her eyes glistening. Later, as the evening wound down, Leo found me by the garden bed where I was planning to plant roses. I never really said it, he began, looking at his shoes. But thank you. For back then. And also I'm sorry. For everything. I know, Leo, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a simple, uncomplicated wave of affection for my brother. The journey had not been easy. It had been a painful tearing away, a fraught negotiation of new boundaries. But standing there in the quiet of my own home, surrounded by the life I had built and the family I had, in a strange way, helped to save, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had learned that true generosity isn't about limitless giving, it's about knowing your own value. And I had discovered that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to walk away, so that everyone, yourself included, has the chance to find their own way home. This experience taught me that setting boundaries isn't an act of selfishness, but an act of self-preservation and often a catalyst for growth in others. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between your own well-being and the expectations of those you love? I would be moved to hear your stories and the lessons you learned along the way. Your journey, like mine, is a testament to the quiet courage it takes to build a life on your own terms.